welcome everyone to Your Life Purpose TV. My name is Pauline Rodish, and this is the show where we are aiming to inspire, encourage, and motivate you to awaken and discover your own innate gifts and talents so that you can move forward in this world and share them with the rest of the world. And helping us to do that are the amazing guests we have on the show, not least the beautiful Lisa Winneke. I have great pleasure in speaking to Lisa. So Lisa is living in Melbourne. She's a mom of 3 boys, and she is the author of a very recent publication called The Dawn of Hope. So Lisa has an amazing story to share with us, and I will obviously let her do most of that. So Lisa, you're very welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you, Pauline, for having me. This is, I feel humbled and honoured to be on your show, and given that it's a new, exciting project, even more exciting because I suppose for me, with the publication and the launch of the book, I'm now on this new, exciting project. So I feel that we're very much aligned with where we're at.
Yes, kindred spirits.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's really been, I think this is turning into the project of real heart and love for me personally, because I feel very blessed to have the opportunity of speaking to people just such as yourself. It's just given me amazing hope, and I have to say encouragement myself to continue with this, to share the messages. So why don't you give us the background, Lisa, as to how you're a mentor, of course, and a speaker as well. But how and what did you, let's just talk a little bit about the background. So what you were doing, I suppose, years ago, and then how everything evolved for you organically in your life, or not, as the case may be.
So you want to meet, will I go back to the darker times?
Absolutely. Why not?
Yeah.
I think so. I think it's important. Yeah.
Yeah. So my old story, I've now put to bed in the chapters in the book and closed that, is that I found myself about 8 years ago having suffered, well, I had 2 boys, twin boys that were born through IVF and born 3 months premature. And it was probably when the boys were about 2 years old that I found myself in a really dark place. And I was desperate, but I was more desperate for help for one of the boys who was developmentally and behaviourally really struggling. And I was struggling with it. What I didn't realise at the time was I was struggling because of my own sense of how I felt about me. So, and I was just projecting this fear of or really it was self-loathing, reflecting that onto him. So I found myself at a kinesiologist, didn't even know what a kinesiologist was. And it was in that session that I was awakened. I really walked out of it. It was a transformational session, because I walked in thinking he needed to be fixed. And I walked out recognising not that I needed to be fixed, but my perception of self needed to be resolved, needed to be healed. So that kind of set me on this path, this new trajectory where I just, for the last 8 years, I've absorbed, I've learned, I've healed, I've unravelled, I've shed the layers of the, whatever you call the onion, to come back to who am I in all of this. So I'm not the old story. I'm not who I thought I was. I'm actually I'm so much greater. I'm so much more. I'm essentially love, and from that place of loving me, I'm able to see that in my external world. So, yeah, does that answer your question?
Well, it does, but I'd love to, for you to share the real essence of the book, because I know that from reading some of your background myself, doing a little bit of research, of course, that there was an eating disorder that dominated your life for some time. So when did that start?
Yeah, so I developed, well, it was bulimia, and the bulimia was triggered when I was 18, when I transitioned from school to adult life, which is a very common time for it to happen in these key transitional periods. And my mum was aware of it, but not really. So that spanned on and off, but predominantly on for 20 years. And so it was when I was trying to fall pregnant. I had numerous miscarriages and ectopic pregnancies, and it finally got to a point where the obstetrician said, you're going to need to go on IVF. And of course, what was going on in my mind, which no one was aware of, this is my fault, look at what I've done to my body, I've been abusing it for 20 years and now I can't even give birth, and I can't, and my husband doesn't know. So when I went on IVF, I sort of controlled it. It was always, I thought I had control of it, but it had full control of me. And then 2 years, when the boys were about 2 years old, when all of this stuff was going on with my son, it raised its ugly head and it came back again, and it came back in really, it was a really aggressive time. The binging and purging was just quite out of control, in an effort to comfort how bad I felt about myself, and also how much I wasn't able to cope with this 2-year-old that I didn't know what was going on. So that was when I found myself at this kinesiologist, and as I said, took me on this different path, and obviously went home and told my husband, who took it, who turned around and said to me, Lise, of course I still love you. You're still you, whether you suffered from an eating disorder or not, you're still the same person, the same woman I married. So yeah, it's been a path that some people say, oh, there's so much healing to do from that. But I have to say it's been so beautiful in so many ways, because nothing could compare to that time of those 20 years of being in real, it was so disconnected from me.
I know. And I think really what I feel from you, and I suppose what I try to teach people myself, even, when I'm not in a professional capacity, but even just having a conversation with a friend or a stranger, I think the biggest injustice that we do to ourselves is to harbor these inverted commas secrets of our life, and that causes us to shrivel and be diluted and so disconnected from our actual power. And I think the freedom comes as a result of owning that and recognizing it, and really not being afraid to be vulnerable and to be open and to be honest. And I think you've proven that. You seem to have proven that.
Yeah, and I think, the word that sort of came up to me then was when you feel such a sense of shame.
Yes.
There is so much shame in that, which is obviously, in Brene Brown, she talks all about shame and vulnerability, that to be vulnerable, that it's not an option. But as I've learned through my own experience, and I've seen other people, is as you travel this path of awakening and coming back to a place of really knowing who you are and liking who you are, and learning how to be compassionate and kind and gentle, that comes as a result that you don't want to have those secrets, because you're not ashamed, you're not fearful of what other people are going to think of you. But that takes time.
It can take time, absolutely. But I think the more people just realize that unraveling and unveiling some of those darker moments within, and those, I suppose, ideas and notions that we often harbor in silence, that once we start to let go of the guilt often that's associated with it, we often, you say shame, and then shame can often lead to guilt, and I suppose really all we're doing is harming ourselves. And it's about, as you say, compassion is huge, to actually really start that beautiful love affair with ourselves. I think the best romance of all is the one that we have with ourselves, and then from there, hopefully all other relationships can blossom and grow. Do you agree with that?
Oh, well, absolutely. Like, isn't that it? Isn't that when we were having a chat with a woman this morning who works in the area of eating disorders, and we were talking about me speaking at something, and she said, ultimately, I'm a giver. I give. And I said, but what about you? What do you give back to you? How do you look after yourself? And it's a worthiness thing, isn't it? It's easy to give because then you get the affirmation that you're doing well. But when you feel worthy and you do love who you are, and you know that you need to look after you as your number one, that whole thing. It's an old thing, but the whole oxygen mask, put it on yourself first and then put it on your loved ones. But when you come from that place of self-love, where you become more accepting, you become kinder, softer, more gentle, it can't not come out in that way towards others. It just can't. It's just that's what the flow-on effect. And that's what I think is the most incredible thing, is watching how my relationships externally have changed. So I had a relationship with my father that was angst. It was full of angst, and we didn't talk. We talked on and off for years. Now, I love my dad. You know, I can't believe that I held him and I looked at him in that way, because I forgave myself, and then I was able to forgive him for whatever I perceived him to have done wrong by me.
And that's another secret to, I suppose, regaining that authentic power and sort of true understanding of our individual power, is when you have the courage to forgive and accept, and to practice non-judgmentalism, and to recognize that everybody's operating from their own perspective, and they all have their own stories, and they've all had their own lessons, or not, as the case may be. So when we learn the lessons, such as what you have done, you've turned your life around. And as a result of being open and honest with your husband, it led you to this amazing journey that you're currently on, where you're able to help other people that are suffering from eating disorders, and just obviously helping them with which is really, in the end, it's a mental illness. And because it's happening in the mind, isn't that right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it is. Well, you know, eating disorder. I mean, whether it's suffering from an eating disorder or suffering from being so busy, chaotic. I mean, even that. It's that not being able to sit in your body and feel your feelings. You know, wanting to numb or comfort or push away. I mean, I think the book really is probably not going to be just for people that have suffered. In fact, it's not really for people who have suffered. It's more so for the parents. But I really think that the stuff that I've talked about, which is, you know, we've got to learn to be self-compassionate. We've really got to practice that and embody it, and not just know it, but know what it feels like to be that way towards ourselves, to choose to forgive, to continue to choose to forgive daily, moment by moment, for all our things that we haven't done well enough, or you know, the practice of seeing our thoughts and stepping back from our thoughts and knowing we're not our thoughts. I think it's for anyone that just isn't living from a place of true, like they're coming from their true essence, whatever that is. You know, for me, it's love. And, you know, if I think about one of the things I've written about how we all have these masks, and for many of us, we don't even know we've got the mask on, and we don't actually take it off. So it's even being aware that we wear masks, and so actually, oh, well, what happens when I take this mask off? Who am I in all of that? Which is leading us, I know I'm going on a different tangent here, but...
I know, but it's so interrelated, and once you start talking this talk, it just, all these dots begin to join, and you want to talk about, well, we're not the role that we're playing, and we've had numerous roles already in our lives, and we've got plenty of roles perhaps to play in the future. And I suppose the mask self is usually coming from the ego, I suppose, really, a place of fear and a lack of real authentic understanding of the true identity of who we are. Then I suppose the never changing aspect of ourselves that eventually hopefully we come home to. And you know, it sometimes just takes, it could be a random stranger on the street that might say something to you that will just be the right moment, and you'll hear it for the first time, but it'll have such a depth of our level of understanding you have within yourself that whatever they've said so will help you decide, okay, there's more. There's actually more, and I am more. And I agree with you that our true essence is love. We come from it, and when we are operating from there, then we can have that peace that so many of us crave. But I think when it's all boiled down, you know, that's what we're looking for, is that inner peace, to be accepted, to be able to accept everybody else, and just share it as you are doing. So how has life changed since you've written the book? What's happening for you at the moment? Tell us about the excitement as a result. It is exciting. I'm writing one myself, so it's exciting.
So it's interesting. So the book only arrived in the actual hard copy, or the copies only arrived about a week ago. And I had an expectation of how I would feel when they arrived. You know, I thought I'd put all this, my heart and soul, into this book. and I've been very, very honest, and I enjoy being honest these days, because I'm now going back to that. I know I'm going back a bit, but being honest, then it gives other people permission to be honest.
Yeah.
And then there's that heart connection. And then you realise we're all the same, and that we all have suffered from the same whatever. And that's what life is all about. So I've loved how things have changed for me over the course. Is I feel so much more connected, and I don't feel separate. I don't feel that lonely feeling that I felt my entire life up until, as I said, 8 years ago. So when the book arrived, that was interesting. I thought I'd be really excited. And when they arrived, I didn't go and open the box, and I was like, or boxes, and I was like, that's really interesting. Why am I resisting opening the boxes? And then I broke down. It was overwhelmed. I was totally overwhelmed by just lots of feelings. Oh my goodness, here it is. This is, what does it mean? What will this mean? Not so much, is it going to sell? Because that, I'd sort of worked through that. But more so, what will this mean moving forward? Who's going to want something of me? Am I still going to be able to keep my groundedness, that all my practices that I do daily, my meditation twice a day, my time for self-compassion and pausing, what's that going to mean? So that's what that was about, as well as some excitement, of course.
Yes.
There was excitement. But I just had to sit with it. So I decided for the next couple of days I wouldn't do anything. I wouldn't work. I would just allow myself to feel all the stuff that was coming up as a result of them arriving. And since then, they've been selling, and mostly online. And I've already had people that have read it and sent me the most beautiful messages. So I'm like, I don't think it's my ego that's pleased by it. I'm just like, wow, okay, I'm so grateful that I've been through all of that, because here I am now being able to share my love.
And did you feel some sense of, I suppose, completion, if you like, as a result of writing the book, that you were able to put the old story, as you said earlier, to bed, if you like? But yet it's alive. It's alive because it's sort of paradoxical, as life is. So in one sense, you've written the story, and you have a new story. That's the whole point of life, that we're going to evolve. We've lots of stories.
I love that.
However, I'm just curious to know about that sense of completion and what's probably next for you. What do you see as next as you're evolving, living your passion, living this beautiful purpose that you have? So what's next?
Interesting, just on that completion. So I didn't realise at the time that was being completed that last year was a number 9 year, which is all about. So I loved that when that was sort of happening. And I'm also I've got a number 9 life path. So I was like, oh yes, this is all aligned. So I feel like every cell of my being is nothing, even in that. So who that girl was that even wrote the book, that's not me. That I've just, as we're ever changing, but my whole identity and my whole being, my physical being, is not any of that previous identity. So for me, moving forward, and part of that is being okay with not actually knowing exactly the way it looks, as I was saying to you earlier. But I've already started being asked to do some speaking, which is, there's this contrast of, yay, I know this is what I'm meant to be doing. And then, okay, well, public speaking, I used to say no to it. So I think this is where I'm headed. I mean, I've started, as I mentioned, mentoring, and I have been for a few years. I'm a qualified kinesiologist and an EFT teacher, so I use a whole host of sort of things that feel good for me, so including essential oils, which is a big part of, I have another business that's a big part of what I do, and crystals and all sorts of things that have assisted me and supported me with my things. So so that's one sort of thing that I will be doing. But I think the workshops and speaking is really where I
You're headed.
want to be able to share, as I said, my being to help people lead them back to that place of love, like, our essence of who we are. How do we get back there?
Beautiful. So what would you say to anybody that's watching us now that is considering maybe asking themselves the question, how do I know what my purpose is? What would you say to someone like that that's just on the cusp of knowing it and not sure. They want to dip their toe in.
It's an interesting one because I grappled with this, and I think I've only discovered my purpose through writing the book.
Yes.
And so I remember reading and listening and, what's your purpose, and that I felt put so much pressure on me because I didn't have the answer.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I would say is, as we talked about, everyone, there is a purpose. And I think our purposes can change a little bit over time. I think our purpose is to be love. It's how that shows up in the world. Share love. I really feel that's it, to be love and to share love. So I would say if you're not aware of what your purpose is, know that it's about timing. And I can't say that enough, just to trust that it does come to us when we're meant to know.
Yes.
And the quieter we can become with our minds and our bodies, the more we give our chance the opportunity to hear the voice inside us that we all have, but we've chosen, or not chosen, but subconsciously just become disconnected from listening to it.
That's right. That's beautiful. And I have to say, I agree with you wholeheartedly. It really can be quite pressurizing for people to think that they need to know their purpose. And of course, it's a whole different conversation to help people to really look at some of the telltale signs that have always been there to guide them. But I think, as you say, it's only when you get some sort of a dawning that there has been this intuitive voice within, or some form of a guidance system always been putting us and looking out for us. And I mean, I'm a teacher of meditation too, and I've been practicing for a long time. I have to wholeheartedly agree with you. It's only in the silence can you hear the voice. Our life and our world is so busy and noisy, and we're bombarded with information, and very often it just is too overwhelming for many of us. So I think step back and then listen, and then you might be guided to tell your story, such as you've done, Lisa, and share it. I mean, there's a book in everybody. We've all got a life story to tell, and I think it's important that, why not do it? And there's so many ways of being able to write and get a book out there. We don't all have to wait for a publisher, which most likely doesn't happen, and actually doesn't happen very often. We all know the story of some very successful authors out there who were rejected and rejected and rejected. And we can talk about our lovely J.K. Rowling, and she's the only billionaire author on the planet and was rejected, 50 times or something. But she believed in herself. Yeah. And I think it's about that, really. It's just finding the courage again to recognize and just to know that you're here for something great, and that you're meant to live your life. And then just let go a little bit. Maybe just step back and let go and let it evolve, and start listening with all ears. So I'm really excited for you, Lisa. I think you've an amazing and a beautiful story and a gorgeous nature to deliver this message and story of yours, to help others to see the light and to be inspired to grow. And none of us know. We don't know how long we have on this planet. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow or next week. So it's very much, really, isn't it, just trusting the moment and try to be here as much as we possibly can. Yes?
Yes. Yeah, all of that.
And I'm looking forward to meeting you.
Yeah, in person. I wish I was there in person with you. So
yes, I know. But I'm grateful to technology all the same. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to make this a reality. Yeah. So have you any last final words, perhaps, that you'd like to share? Is there anything you think you would have been doing differently? Any other career path you might have taken? Was there anything else that you thought I might like to do in this world? Any other job?
I really wanted to be a singer.
Did you?
When I was young, I wanted to be a singer, and interestingly, use my voice.
Wow.
But then I got this fear of criticism, and that just stopped it all. So it's fascinating that I now find myself using my voice, just maybe in a different way. I still sing, but I just don't sing to people.
In public.
I sing to my kids. And I did take singing lessons last year, which I loved. But yeah, a singer, that would have been it. And I think it's all the reason, because it makes me feel good, and I want other people to feel good too. So really, if there's anything through all of this is, I just want women to know, and I say women, I want women to really know their value. Like, I want them to know how beautiful they are.
Yeah.
And how much greater they are than what their minds are perceiving them to be. I just want that. And I want women to feel the worthiness that I feel and that I see in them. That's really that's what I want.
I can feel it. I have to say, we share a very similar mission. So it's been wonderful speaking to you. And I'm so grateful that you've been on the show today. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you so much for having me. I love it. I can't wait to meet you. And I know I'm going to see you again soon, I'm sure.
Without a doubt. So let's keep spreading this love and hope to everyone, to women especially. And also, thank you everyone for tuning in today. And if anybody out there would like to share their story, please get in touch with me. All the details are below the video. I hope you'll subscribe to our channel and support Lisa in her work going forward, and just keep spreading the message, sharing this video if it has touched you in some way. And we all have our own story to share, and I would love to hear yours. So please get in touch with me. The details are below, as I said. So until this time next week, bye-bye. Love yourself lots, and get a little bit curious about who you are, because I promise you, and get still. It's important to get still and listen to that beautiful inner guidance. So thanks so much for watching and listening today. Bye for now. Lots of love.